This constellation is resourcing ourselves after losing a loved ones, learning to cope with the new normal and resourcing ourselves along the journey. My name is Promise, and I'm going to be your facilitator for today. The constellation is going to be quite straightforward. We're going to need some preps, 3 objects. We're going to ground and then go straight into the constellation. I would recommend that you first watch the entirety of the video before you follow along, and after you've grasped what the constellation is, the model of the constellation, then you can apply it to your own specific situation. So, of course, I just had to make sure that the technology is on our side. Usually on Zoom, I can figure this out, but on camera, I'm learning. Okay, so I've collected my preps. We need 3 objects for this process. And I'm using these dollies, these beautiful dollies from African Constellation. And you can use any dollies, of course, Lego or wooden sculptures or something that you can hold. I'm trying to think. You can also use stones, like this little guy over here, or crystals. They could also work. I brought something else, but now I can't see what else. Okay. Yeah, anything that we can hold in our hand, we can use. What I wouldn't advise us to use is papers. And I know on my one-on-one online constellations, I do work with papers where you can jump into one paper to another as a representation. I'm not advising it with this particular process that we're about to start. Okay, so you can gather your props, your 3 objects, and once you have that, we're going to move on to grounding. Actually, before we ground, I would advise that you create a space where you can do this work for yourself today, and it needs to be quiet so that you don't have any disturbance, of course. And you can do this sitting like I am, like I'm sitting down, and for me, this is how I work. Whether I'm doing a work for myself or with clients, this is how I work. You can also be standing up, you can be sitting down. As long as you're upright, you should be fine. And I can't stress enough the importance of not being disturbed and allowing the process to take place without interruptions, of course. Okay, we're gonna hold a question as our grounding. I named this process as resourcing ourselves after losing a loved one. And that can be a parent, a child that we've lost, or any loved one that that we've lost, that has passed on, and that we are trying to learn how to cope, to deal with the new normal of them no longer being with us. So the model of this work today that I'm offering, you're gonna take it in and fill it into your very own specific situation. So I'll be using it in a general sense, and it can be modified accordingly. So when we sit with that question of how do we resource ourselves after losing a loved one, death is such a big force that us as humans or any living creatures, really we can't explain it further. It's like one moment we have a person and they're here with us and they're physical, and we can touch them, we can talk to them, we can have human interaction with them. And the next moment, when that process starts, when they pass, then they're not here. And it's such a shock to the system, and we usually don't know how to cope. How do we then move on? How do we cope? How do we allow this process and to maybe have them still in this different form that they've now taken? We're gonna honor death itself, honor the immortality of ourselves first, and of our loved ones around us. All of them, they are not mortal, and all of them, they are bound to life, therefore they're bound to death as well. It's a two-sided coin, and by honoring our very own immortality, our very own passing, we find way to honor theirs. And I would like to invite you to take a few moments of honoring your own immortality and ultimately honoring death itself, the entity of passing. I'm gonna bring my dollies to me, and I invite that you put them, you hold them like this. If they're too big that you can't, you can put them in your lap, or hold them if you can, like this. And we're gonna now name these. So let me just do it like this. So this is what is like the current situation. This is what is the passing of this person. And I'll use my father as an example, who just recently passed 4 years ago. Actually, it's not recent, but it feels like it's recent actually. So this will be the state of my dad as passed on. This is him now that I can't call him anymore. I can't reach him. I can't physically touch him. This is a state that is currently, and this we're gonna name what is. Okay. And this little yellow one, we're gonna name it what was. So this would be my father before he passed. So this is the father that I knew, all of it, all the good, the bad, all of it. His life, his life to me, what he was for me, a father. And this is what I knew, or what I'm longing for, what was. And this one, we're gonna call it the unknown for now. And we won't be working with this one in the first part of this constellation. So I'll put it right here. And as you saw how I placed my I don't know if you can actually see how I placed my props after I've named them. I invite you to do the same. So after you've named what is and what was and the unknown, I invite you to place them in front of you and take note as to where where you've placed them. Are they close together? Are they far apart? Where are they standing in relation to each other, in relation to these three? And you can see mine are standing side to side, but the unknown is behind both of these. It's very important to note that positioning, because it very much reflects the state of how we are relating to these two states of them. Because what is and what was, it's what, with grief, is what we are waving into. It's what we come into what is and we go into what was, and we kind of long for usually for what was and try to make sense of what is, right? So I invite you to not rush this process. And of course, you can, the beauty with the video now, you can pause it and take as long as you want with this process, and with just observing this and allowing those emotions that might want to surface as you play with this state. Or, and I say play, I mean go into them for yourself. And if when you're ready, you're gonna now take what is. So this is the current state. I invite you to put it in your hands and just say, actually, what is, like saying it out loud, and say, you have passed. For example, I would say, my beloved Father, you have now passed. You were found in your house, lifeless. You've passed. And I truly invite you to state the actual facts of what is. Sometimes we don't actually even say the facts out loud. We don't say it out loud. So that's why I invite you to say it out loud. As I'm demonstrating this constellation, I'm also going through my own processing, and I've done this so many times already when I came up with this model, but I still have to utilize my breath to help me ground me here, so that I'm able to look, so that I'm able to say the actual facts and look. It's very important that we stay with our breath. So I would offer some few sentences that you can use and moderate to your own specific situation. Dear Father, now that you've passed, I don't know how to cope. You can say, dear Father, or dear Mother, dear daughter, dear child, dear friend, dear husband, or dear wife. Now that you've passed, I don't know how to fill your shoes. I don't know how to fill the space that you've left. Now that you've passed, I hurt inside and I'm confused. Now that you've passed, I don't know how to move on without you. I don't know how to accept. I invite you to stay with all the emotions that are coming up for you. Acknowledging them and acknowledging your suffering. It's not a time where you have to be strong or to say you're strong. You can just acknowledge what is as it is. And then invites us to move on to what was when you feel ready. And in no way you need to feel rushed. You can pause this and take as long as you need with what is. And of course we're going to go back to what is, but if you need to stay longer in that first part, please do so. But when we now move to what was, really feel into it. Feel into what was. And I know sometimes what wasn't great, right? What was pain for them. Maybe they suffered an illness that they had to live with that wasn't easy on them. Maybe what was complete bliss, and what them passing was not at all expected. Whatever what was, we stay with it, because what was is that they were our father, or they were our child, they were our spouse, and it came with a lot of things. It encompassed a lot of things. And even if towards the end they might have suffered through a disease, but there was more than we've known of them before that. So we're now embracing all of that, all of what was. And we sit with it. Dear Father, you are my father and I am your daughter. And you loved me and cared for me. I loved you and cherished you. We laughed, you called. Dear Father, you were good to me. I thank you. This can be different, of course, even if there were pain. like any relationship, right? We can still acknowledge what was, also try and see what was, and look truly. Maybe if it was pain, we would say something like along the lines of, "Dear mother, we had a struggling relationship. I never felt love from you. Just, you didn't feel it, that's a fact. And we're not saying you didn't love me, because we can't say that, we don't know. But we can say, I never felt loved by you." And sit with that. I find looking at what was to be more difficult than looking at what is at times, because what was has still, well, it appears what was has still possibilities. It still has an expansion, because we both physical. And when we look at what was and realize there's an ending, that was that, and it can't continue. It has always been difficult, and like I said, for me it's been 4 years, but it feels very new at times, and I have worked with this process for myself, and it has gotten better. And sometimes I find I would just say out loud on my own in my ordinary day and think, it was good with you, Dad. Or sometimes it was so hard with you. You know, we had such disagreements, and acknowledge what was. And the more I find, the more I allow myself to just look, to just remember and look. And yes, there's emotions that comes with that, and I don't let them hold me back from remembering and stop myself, but I let them come, those waves of emotions. But the more we look, the more we can look without the emotions at times. Now, what was and what is, they're still the same coin. I'll put them like this. They together. They can't be separated. We can't separate them. The fact that they've died and the fact that they've lived is facts, and it's something that can never be separated. How do we live with this coin now? Because what was will always remain in the cosmos, and also in our heart, of course. We'll always hold those memories, and sometimes we even have snippets and photographs and maybe recordings of those moments in life with them. And we know that what was real, it really happened, and it will always be something that did happen. But the what is, the present of what is also a reality that we have to accept, that is that this is the new reality. They've turned to the both sides of their coin. And I remember I said we have a third dolly, a third prop of the unknown. this is, I'll say, the future for ourselves in this relationship, or rather the embodiment of these two. This would what would be, in other words, we could say acceptance. And by acceptance, it doesn't mean that there's no pain. Of course, acceptance doesn't mean that we forget. Acceptance means we resource ourselves to move forward. And when we bring acceptance in, we almost marry these two for ourselves in our heart, and we put them together. And as painful as each of these state may be, there is a way where we can carry them both, and resource ourselves in coping with this. Acceptance, or the embodiment of these, might look like being able to live with both of them in our hearts, or maybe even through our lives, in our children, like, telling stories of our parent or the loved one, continuing to remember them or to honor them in some way. I know for me, with my father, whenever his birthday has came in the last 2 years, I would honor it by really celebrating the life that he lived, that I remembered. When the day when he was buried, leading from the day when I found out, the day that he was buried, I take that time to actually mourn, to go through a process of remembrance. Not mourning is not even the right word. I'm translating everything from Zulu at this point, but in Zulu I would say uzila. I guess it is mourn, but to honor, to honor the death, to honor his death, to honor his passing. And the first time I did that, it was very difficult, remembering the state I was in. I couldn't cope, but now I could even visit the graveside, or go to his house, because he passed in his own house and they found him there, and I could be around there and laugh and think, you're really gone. And it became easier to just think, wow, life, like, you were here and now you're not, you've gone. But just to keep him and to keep this state as part of my new reality, and to move forward with them. And I invite that you take on the practice of still embracing them, embracing, maybe if I'm using the passing of my father, but if it was a child, or we can remember the day they've passed, and have a branch, or have a memorial of a remembrance of some sort with some family, and maybe we think about them, maybe the day, how it was for us, or it was so hard, or tell the people that maybe didn't know about them, tell them, well, this was, my father. Or if you then have children and they never got to know their grandfather, you can tell them that, this day I had a father and your grandfather, and he passed on his birthday. You can still remember him, and say, this was the day when he was born, and on his birthday, this is what he liked. My father really liked biltong. And so on his birthdays, I would get a biltong. Sometimes I will eat it, but sometimes I'll just have it around me, and as a way of remembering, and a way of keeping him and allowing myself to cope, to deal with what is new now. Now I invite you, of course, to take your own practice with this unknown. It will be known to you. How are you going to embody this new normal, right? And whatever it looks like to you, embrace it. And remember that you are doing this for yourself, not for them. Because I truly believe that they need us to be okay, of course. They want us to be well and to be able to move forward. But we need to be okay for ourselves, not for them, but for ourselves, so that we can cope. And so this unknown should be something that is resonant to the individual, to you. This is what is resonant to me, the remembrance that I do with my dad, and that I mark on my calendar to be reminded. I mean, I don't really forget, but still in to be reminded, like I would remember a loved one. I would remember his birthday when he was still here with me, and I would still do something, and I keep him in that way with me. And I also honor death, which is such a big thing to practice, to do, to honor the other side of life. Like we honor having, a new child, and we appreciate life, and we sometimes really depreciate the other side of it, rightfully so, because what was so much more than the new normal. I'm going to end this constellation now here and put my dollars here next to me, releasing them. Now I hope you can follow along this process, and I hope that you find resource in this process, and wishing you all the best and all the resources that you need to deal with this new normal in your life. Okay, bye-bye.